The afternoon sun filtered through the blinds of Mr. Goldstein's office, casting thin strips of light across the mahogany desk between us. I sat up straight despite the arthritis gnawing at my spine, my hands folded neatly over my purse, the same leather purse Harold had given me for our 40th anniversary, just 6 months before cancer took him. Across from me sat my son Michael, his eyes avoiding mine, and beside him Vanessa, my daughter-in-law of 7 years, wearing that smug smile that had become all too familiar. "Mrs. Eleanor Hamilton," Mr. Goldstein began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Thank you for coming in today to discuss the matter of your estate." Before he could continue, Vanessa cleared her throat. "I don't understand why we needed this formal meeting," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "You've already given us everything, haven't you, Eleanor? The house in Westport, the summer cottage, the investments." She looked at her manicured nails and then directly at Mr. Goldstein. "This seems like a waste of everyone's time." The room fell silent. I could feel Michael's discomfort beside her, but he said nothing, just as he'd said nothing 3 weeks ago when I found them in my home office, rifling through Harold's files. Just as he'd said nothing when Vanessa had convinced him I was becoming too forgetful to manage my own finances. I reached into my purse and pulled out a sealed envelope, sliding it across the desk to Mr. Goldstein. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I've called this meeting to hand over my real will." The look on Vanessa's face was worth every cent of Mr. Goldstein's $400 per hour fee. My journey to this moment began 65 years ago in a small apartment in Queens, where my mother taught me that dignity wasn't something you could buy, but something you had to maintain, especially when the world tried to take it from you. "Eleanor," she would say, "always keep something back for yourself. Security isn't just money in the bank. It's knowing your own mind." Harold and I met at college. I was studying literature and he was in pre-law. We married young, lived frugally, and built everything together. Our first home was a tiny 2-bedroom with cracked tiles and unreliable plumbing, but we filled it with books and dreams. Harold worked 80-hour weeks while I taught high school English and raised Michael. Every decision, every investment, every sacrifice was shared. When Harold's law practice took off in the 90s, we could have moved to a mansion, but instead we bought sensibly and invested the difference. "For Michael's future," Harold would say, "and for our grandkids someday." We both came from nothing and built everything with our own hands. Michael was our only child, a miracle baby after years of trying. Perhaps we spoiled him, I can admit that now. Harold coached his little league teams. I volunteered at every school event. We paid for the best college, supported him when he changed majors 3 times, celebrated when he finally found his passion in architecture. I still remember the day he brought Vanessa home to meet us. She was beautiful, ambitious, and charming. She complimented my garden, asked Harold about his most interesting cases, and seemed genuinely interested in our family photos. "She's perfect for him," Harold whispered to me that night. I wanted to believe it. The first red flag appeared at their wedding. I overheard Vanessa talking to her bridesmaid, looking out at the country club Harold and I had paid for. "Not bad for the old people, right? But you should see their house in Westport. That's the real prize, right on the water." I brushed it off as wedding day nerves. Young people say thoughtless things. Then Harold got sick. Pancreatic cancer, swift and merciless. During those final months, Michael visited when he could, but it was always work deadlines or commitments that kept him away more than not. Vanessa rarely came, always finding some excuse. But the moment Harold passed, they were suddenly present, concerned, involved. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone in that big house," Michael said, just 2 weeks after the funeral. "We're worried about you." "We think you should consider moving into assisted living," Vanessa added. "We found some really nice places." I was still finding Harold's socks mixed in with mine in the laundry. still sleeping on one side of the bed out of habit, and they wanted me to sell our home. I'm only 65, I reminded them. Your father and I chose this house to age in place. There's a bedroom and bathroom on the main floor specifically for that purpose. They exchanged glances, that conspiratorial look I would come to know all too well. The accident started happening shortly after. I'd find my medication bottles open when I was certain I'd closed them. Items would be moved from their usual places, making me question my memory. My checkbook showed withdrawals I couldn't recall making. See? This is exactly what we're talking about, Vanessa said, when I mentioned the strange occurrences. You're getting confused. It's normal at your age. Then came the day I returned early from my book club to find them in Harold's office, going through his files. Michael jumped when he saw me looking guilty, but Vanessa didn't miss a beat. Oh, Eleanor, we were just organizing things for you. So many papers here, it must be overwhelming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the look in Vanessa's eyes, not guilt, but annoyance at being interrupted. I got up at 3 a.m. and went to the office. The filing cabinet had been rearranged, but I knew exactly what was missing. The folder containing information about Harold's and my investments, our property deeds, and the draft of our will. The next morning, I called Patricia, my oldest friend, and a retired bank manager. I need your help, I told her, and your discretion. Over the next week, Patricia helped me take inventory of everything. We discovered that someone had attempted to access our safe deposit box. Online banking passwords had been changed, then changed back. The draft will was indeed missing, a will that left everything equally to Michael and to a trust that would allow me to stay in my home until I chose to leave it. Ellie, Patricia said gently, I think they're setting you up to look incompetent so they can take control of your assets. I didn't want to believe it. Not my Michael. Not the boy who once gave me a handmade Mother's Day card that promised, I will take care of you when you're old, Mommy. But the evidence was mounting. There was one more thing I needed to check. The next day, I asked Michael and Vanessa to come over for dinner. I prepared Harold's famous beef bourguignon, Michael's favorite childhood dish. As we ate, I deliberately steered the conversation toward the future. I've been thinking, I said casually, about what you both said. Maybe the house is too much for me now. Vanessa nearly choked on her wine. Really? That's wonderful, Eleanor. I knew you'd come around. Michael at least had the decency to look concerned. Are you sure, Mom? This is a big decision. Well, I continued, cutting a piece of beef, I thought we could look at those assisted living places you mentioned, and then talk about what happens to the house. I assume you two would move in? Vanessa and Michael exchanged glances. Actually, Vanessa said, we were thinking of selling it. The market's excellent right now, and with the waterfront location. But your father and I bought this as our forever home, I interrupted, watching their expressions carefully. You always said you loved this house, Michael. Michael shifted uncomfortably. We do. Mom, but our place in the city is closer to work, and with the money from selling this place we could pay off your debts, I finished for him. Silence fell over the table. Michael looked like that 5-year-old boy I caught stealing cookies before dinner, shamefaced and scared. What debts? I asked softly. More silence. Michael has had some investment setbacks, Vanessa finally offered, her tone defensive. Nothing serious, just a temporary cash flow issue. How temporary? How much? I pressed. Mom, it's not something you need to worry about, Michael said. Almost $2 million, Vanessa blurted out. But the architecture firm is going to turn around, and with your house selling for at least $4 million, plus the summer cottage and investments, we'd still have plenty left to make sure you're comfortable in a nice facility. The room seemed to tilt. $2 million, and they'd already allocated my assets in their minds. I see, was all I could manage to say. That night after they left, I sat in Harold's study, in his old leather chair that still smelled faintly of his cologne. "What would you do, my love?" I whispered to the empty room. But I already knew the answer. Harold always valued fairness above all else. But he never let people take advantage of him. The next morning I called Mr. Goldstein, Harold's old law partner and our family attorney for 30 years. I explained the situation, and he listened without interruption. "Eleanor," he said when I finished, "Harold always said you were the strongest person he knew. I think it's time to show them that." Over the next 2 weeks, I executed my plan meticulously. First, I had Mr. Goldstein draw up a new legal will. Then I moved a significant portion of our joint assets into accounts that couldn't be touched without my explicit approval. I installed security cameras in my home, changed all the locks, and hired a geriatric care manager to assess and document my cognitive abilities. I also called Michael's architectural firm and spoke with his partner, David, whom I'd known for years. The temporary cash flow problem turned out to be Vanessa's 3 shopping spree-filled credit cards. A disastrous investment in a friend's startup that Michael had hidden from his business partner, and a beach house in the Hamptons they had put a massive down payment on without secure financing. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," David said. "I wanted to call you, but Michael insisted he had it under control. The firm itself is fine, but Michael's personal finances are a mess." The final piece fell into place when I accidentally left a fake will in Harold's desk drawer, one that gave Michael and Vanessa everything they wanted, with no strings attached. The security cameras caught them finding it 3 days later. Vanessa's gleeful expression as she read it, making my heart break for the son who stood beside her, relief rather than shame on his face. Which brings us back to Mr. Goldstein's office, the real will now in his hands. "This appears to be in order, Mrs. Hamilton," he said, breaking the seal and scanning the document. "Would you like me to summarize the contents for everyone present?" "Please do," I said, keeping my eyes on Michael and Vanessa. Mr. Goldstein cleared his throat. "In essence, Mrs. Hamilton's estate is to be divided as follows. First, the establishment of the Harold and Eleanor Hamilton Educational Trust, which will receive 6% of the total estate, including the Westport home, which will be sold upon Mrs. Hamilton's death or decision to relocate." Vanessa's mouth opened in shock, but Mr. Goldstein continued. "This trust will provide scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds pursuing careers in law, education, or architecture. Second, 30% of the estate will go to Michael Hamilton, but held in a spendthrift trust managed by this firm, with disbursements based on demonstrated financial responsibility and match savings." "What?" Vanessa exploded. "You can't do this. We need that money now." "Ms. Phillips Hamilton, please let me finish," Mr. Goldstein said firmly. "The remaining 10% will be set aside for any grandchildren's education, held in trust until they reach college age." "There's nothing immediate," Michael finally spoke, his voice small. "Mom, the firm is about to collapse. We're going to lose everything." I looked at my son, this man I had raised, this man who had planned to put me in a facility so he could sell my home out from under me. "The firm isn't collapsing, Michael. I spoke with David. The firm is fine. It's your personal finances that are in trouble." Michael's face went pale. "You had no right." "I had every right," I cut in. "I'm your mother." "Not your bank. And I'm certainly not incompetent, despite what you two have been trying to make me believe." Vanessa stood up, her designer purse clutched tightly. "This is ridiculous. You're just a vindictive old woman who can't accept that times have changed. That money should stay in the family." "It is staying in the family," I replied calmly. "Just not in your wallet, Vanessa. And the trust for Michael ensures he'll have long-term security rather than a quick bailout that you'd likely burn through in a year." "We'll contest it," she threatened. "We'll prove you're not of sound mind." Mr. Goldstein cleared his throat again. "That would be inadvisable. Mrs. Phillips Hamilton. Mrs. Hamilton has been evaluated by a licensed geriatric specialist who found her to be of extremely sound mind. Additionally, we have evidence suggesting you and Mr. Hamilton may have been attempting to manipulate Mrs. Hamilton's financial affairs, including unauthorized access attempts to accounts and removal of documents. He slid a folder across the desk containing printouts from my security cameras, bank access records, and the geriatric assessment. Michael picked it up with trembling hands. "Mom," he whispered, "I never wanted to." "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "Maybe not at first. Maybe it started with just letting Vanessa handle things. But somewhere along the way, you decided that what your father and I spent a lifetime building was yours to take before I was even gone." Vanessa grabbed her coat. "This is absurd. Michael, we're leaving." Michael hesitated, looking at me with those same eyes that used to beg for one more bedtime story, one more push on the swing. "There is one more thing," I added. "I've arranged to pay off the Hampton house so you won't lose your down payment. Consider it a gift, the last one. What you do with it is up to you, but I suggest you learn to live within your means." Vanessa froze by the door. I could almost see the calculations running behind her eyes. The beach house was worth at least $1.5 million. "That's very generous," she said, her tone suddenly softer. "It's not generosity," I corrected her. "It's a chance for my son to remember who he really is." After they left, Mr. Goldstein offered me a glass of water and a sympathetic smile. "That couldn't have been easy, Eleanor." I looked out the window at the busy street below, watching Michael and Vanessa walk to their car in silence, a visible gap between them. "Actually, Richard, it was the easiest thing I've done in years. For the first time since Harold died, I feel like I can breathe." The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls from Michael and a text message. "I'm coming over, alone, please." I made coffee and waited on the porch, watching the October leaves spiral down from the maple trees Harold and I had planted when we first bought the house. When Michael's car pulled up, I noticed immediately that he was driving his old Honda, not the luxury SUV he and Vanessa had purchased last year. He sat beside me on the porch swing, the same swing where I used to rock him to sleep during colicky nights, where Harold and I watched countless sunsets, where I sat alone for hours after Harold's funeral. "I've left Vanessa," he said without preamble. "Or she left me when I told her I wouldn't contest the will. I'm not sure which happened first." I sipped my coffee, letting him find his words. "I kept telling myself we were trying to help you," he continued, staring at his hands, "that you were getting older and needed protection. But last night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Dad's face, imagining what he would say if he knew what I'd done." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I set down my coffee and took his hand, the same hand I had once held as we crossed streets. The hand that had made me those fingerprint art projects in elementary school. The hand that had held his father's as Harold took his last breath while I was making tea in the hospital room. "Michael, do you remember what your father always said about mistakes?" He gave a small smile. "That they're just detours, not destinations." "Exactly. You took a detour, a big one, but now you get to choose your path forward." "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he whispered. "Probably not," I agreed. "At least not yet. But you have the chance to earn it." That conversation was the first of many. Michael moved into a small apartment near his firm, began therapy, and joined a financial management group. We met weekly for dinner, sometimes awkward, sometimes tearful, but increasingly honest. 3 months later, David called to tell me that Michael had been working overtime, bringing in new clients and rebuilding his reputation. "Whatever you said to him." "Eleanor, it worked. He's the Michael we all used to know." I didn't tell him that I hadn't really said anything. I had simply shown my son that there were consequences to his actions, something Harold and I should have perhaps done more of when he was younger. As for Vanessa, she contested the will despite Mr. Goldstein's warnings. The judge dismissed the case within minutes after reviewing the evidence. She moved to Miami with a real estate developer 6 months later. The Educational Trust has now funded scholarships for 12 students. Last spring, I attended the graduation of our first scholar, a young woman from the South Bronx, who completed her law degree with honors. As I watched her cross the stage, I felt Harold's presence beside me, his voice in my ear. "See, Ellie? This is how our love story continues." I still live in our Westport home, though now I have a weekly housekeeper and a gardener for the heavy work. The security cameras remain, not out of fear, but as a reminder that vigilance is sometimes necessary, even with those we love. Michael comes for Sunday dinner every week. Sometimes he brings a date, though none has been serious yet. Last month he helped me set up an art studio in the spare bedroom, something I'd always wanted but never made time for. "Dad would love that you're finally painting," he said as he assembled the easel. Yesterday Michael and I sat on the porch swing, watching a summer storm roll in over the water. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Not the will, but showing me the evidence. You could have just changed everything quietly and never told me what you knew." I considered the question, watching lightning dance across the darkening horizon. "No," I finally said. "You needed to see yourself clearly, and I needed you to see me clearly too. Not as an old woman to be managed, but as the same mother who changed your diapers and taught you to read and helped you apply to college. Being 65 doesn't make me a different person, Michael. It just makes me a person with 65 years of experience." He nodded slowly. "I see that now." The rain began to fall, gentle at first, and then in sheets. We stayed on the porch, protected by the overhang, watching nature's display together. This morning I woke early and made myself tea in the kitchen where Harold and I had shared thousands of breakfasts. I'm meeting with Mr. Goldstein later today to make a small amendment to my will, adding a provision that Michael can purchase our home from the trust if he chooses, preserving it as the family home it was always meant to be. As I sip my tea, I think about the lessons of these past months, that love without respect is empty, that we are defined by our choices, not our mistakes, that sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the truth, even when it hurts. The sun rises over the water, painting the kitchen in gold. In this light, I can almost see Harold sitting across from me, his crossword puzzle half finished, looking up with that smile that always made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. "We did all right in the end, didn't we?" I whisper to his memory. A beam of sunlight warms my face, and I know he would agree. I've learned that family, real family, is built on truth, not convenience. It's forged in the difficult conversations, the painful reckonings, and the conscious choice to see each other as we truly are, flaws and all. Michael and I are rebuilding our relationship one Sunday dinner at a time, and while it may never be perfect, it's becoming something real and honest. As for me, I'm no longer just Harold's widow or Michael's mother. At 65, I'm finally becoming fully Eleanor again. Painting, joining a hiking club, even dating a kind widower I met at a community garden workshop. Life continues to surprise me. The greatest revenge against those who would diminish you isn't anger or punishment. It's living well and authentically, standing in your truth, maintaining your dignity. The look on Vanessa's face in that lawyer's office was satisfying. Yes, but the real victory was in reclaiming my power, my voice, and my future. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know this. They belong to me. Every decision, every dollar, every day is mine to direct. Not because I'm wealthy or because I outmaneuvered my daughter-in-law, but because I refuse to surrender my autonomy. My mother was right all those years ago in that small Queens apartment. Security isn't just money in the bank. It's knowing your own mind and standing firm in that knowledge, especially when others try to make you doubt yourself. The real will I handed over that day contained more than just the distribution of assets. It contained my will to live on my own terms, to protect what Harold and I had built, and to ensure our legacy would benefit not just our son, but generations of young people with dreams larger than their circumstances. In the end, that's what we leave behind, not just our possessions, but the ripples of our choices, extending outward in ways we may never fully see. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.